The morning sun filtered weakly through the towering pines as Daniel Turner, a lean 17-year-old with unruly dark hair and a mop of freckles across his nose, tightened the straps on his worn backpack and swung his battered mountain bike over a fallen log at the edge of the forest that bordered his small hometown. It was late spring in 1988. The air, crisp but warming, filled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers and the distant hum of cicadas awakening from their winter silence. Daniel had set out early that day with the familiar confidence of a boy who knew every winding trail and hidden creek in the woods like the back of his hand, eager to explore new paths and perhaps reach a clearing he had heard about from older kids in town. His parents, Tom and Helen Turner, watched from the porch of their modest wooden home, their smiles tinged with the usual worry reserved for a boy on the cusp of adulthood, but still beloved and vulnerable. They waved him off, calling reminders to be safe and to return before dusk, words that echoed with more weight than either realized. The forest, a sprawling maze of shadows and sunlight, held both promise and danger. A world Daniel had grown up in, yet one that could swallow him whole if he was not careful. Hours passed without word, and as the sun dipped lower, the unease in the Turner household grew into a gnawing fear. When Daniel failed to return by nightfall, panic set in like a dark cloud, wrapping the family in its suffocating grip. Neighbors were alerted. Flashlights and makeshift search parties formed, their beams cutting through the creeping darkness as they called his name into the silent woods, voices cracking with desperation. The local sheriff arrived, a seasoned man with tired eyes who coordinated the initial search efforts with grim efficiency, aware that every moment lost diminished the chance of finding the boy unharmed. Flyers were printed and posted around town, photos of Daniel frozen in time, his easy smile and youthful energy haunting reminders of a life suddenly paused. The forest seemed indifferent to the turmoil it had caused, its canopy whispering secrets in the wind, concealing the truth beneath layers of leaves and earth. As night settled, the searchers reluctantly retreated, their hearts heavy with uncertainty and dread, leaving the Turners in a world that had shifted irrevocably. The once familiar rhythms of their home were broken, replaced by the hollow echo of absence and a mother's whispered prayers that tomorrow would bring news, hope, or even a miracle. In the quiet hours before dawn, the town held its breath, united by fear and the unspoken question hanging over them all. What had happened to Daniel Turner that day in the forest where he had vanished without a trace? The years that followed Daniel Turner's disappearance cast a long and unrelenting shadow over his family, fracturing the lives of his parents, Tom and Helen, and his younger sister, Emily, in ways that seeped into every quiet moment and haunted every empty room of their home. Tom, once a sturdy man with a gentle laugh, found himself retreating into long hours at the factory and evenings spent nursing a bottle of whiskey, his eyes distant and hollow, burdened by a grief too heavy to express. Helen, the heart of the family, carried the weight in a different way, her days consumed by rituals of remembrance, lighting candles on birthdays, setting a place at the dinner table, clutching worn photographs as if their touch might summon her son back from the void. Her face bore the fine lines of worry and sleepless nights. Eyes reddened from tears she refused to shed in front of others, and a spirit strained but unbroken. Young Emily, caught between childhood and the cruel awakening of loss, wrestled with confusion and anger, her bright smiles fading into silence as she struggled to understand why her brother had vanished and why answers never came. The family's home, once filled with laughter and the chaos of growing children, grew quiet and cold. the spaces Daniel once occupied echoing with absence. Holidays were marked by bittersweet gatherings where smiles were forced and conversations skirted around the subject no one dared fully face. Friends and neighbors offered sympathy in the early days, but as time stretched on and hope dimmed, support waned, leaving the Turners increasingly isolated in their pain. Each new anniversary was a fresh wound, reopening memories of frantic searches through dense woods, fruitless police interviews, and the agonizing waiting for news that never arrived. The uncertainty gnawed at them, a relentless torment that fractured relationships and seeded doubt. Had they done enough? Had they missed signs? Could they have prevented the loss? Arguments flared and subsided, fueled by grief and frustration, as the family grappled with blame and helplessness, trying to hold on to one another while drifting apart. Yet beneath the surface of despair, there lingered a fragile thread of hope, woven from the stubborn love that refused to let go, driving Helen to organize community vigils and Emily to cling to stories of her brother's kindness and laughter. Over time, the Turners became advocates for missing children, their grief transforming into purpose, but the ache remained, a quiet companion that shaped every decision and shadowed every smile. The passage of decades did not soften the edges of their sorrow, but sharpened their resolve to seek truth and justice, even as they faced the cruel reality that answers might never come. In the stillness of their home, surrounded by memories and unanswered questions, the Turner family endured, a portrait of love and loss intertwined, forever marked by a boy who vanished one spring day in 1988, and the family left to live with the silence he left behind. The case of Daniel Turner's disappearance slowly slipped from the urgent headlines and frantic searches into the shadowy realm of cold cases, where hope grows thin and answers become whispers, lost in time, leaving a trail of unanswered questions that tangled through the town like a thick fog. The local police, once vigilant and active, faced dwindling leads as the years passed, the files gathering dust in cluttered archives while officers rotated in and out. Each new investigator inheriting the burden of a mystery that refused to yield its secrets. Interviews were revisited and witnesses re-questioned, but memories had faded, details blurred, and timelines blurred into uncertainty, frustrating every attempt to build a coherent picture. The original search teams combed the forest and surrounding areas with thoroughness born of desperation, yet found nothing conclusive. Only fragments of evidence that seemed to dissolve upon closer scrutiny. Rumors began to weave themselves into the fabric of the town's daily life. Tales of strange lights flickering among the trees, unexplained sounds at dusk, and shadowy figures glimpsed on forgotten trails. Stories told in hushed tones by those who remembered the day, but could offer no real help. Some whispered of accidents hidden by the thick woods, others of foul play covered up by powerful locals, and a few clung to the faint hope that Daniel had simply run away to start anew. Though that hope grew ever more fragile with time. Community gatherings that once united the town in collective grief slowly lost momentum, replaced by a guarded silence, where the past was a painful wound too raw to revisit. Friends and neighbors who had once rallied around the Turner family drifted away, unable or unwilling to face the continuing uncertainty, leaving the family increasingly isolated in their sorrow. The media attention waned, shifting to newer tragedies and sensational stories, while the case files remained locked away, accessible only to those willing to dig through layers of bureaucracy and fading records. Efforts to reopen the investigation occasionally surfaced, sparked by tip-offs or renewed public interest, but invariably founded on a lack of tangible evidence or reliable testimony. The local police chief, occasionally addressed the public, expressing sympathy and a commitment to justice, but admitting the limitations imposed by time and missing information. Daniel's name became a quiet echo in the town's collective memory, a symbol of loss and the frustration of a truth just beyond reach. Despite the passage of nearly 3 decades, the unanswered questions haunted those who remembered and those who lived in the shadow of the mystery. The forest where Daniel disappeared remained unchanged, silent, dense, and impenetrable, guarding its secrets as the town moved forward, forever marked by the boy who vanished one spring day and the cold case that became a lingering ghost in the community's heart. 36 years had passed since Daniel Turner vanished into the dense forest, years filled with unanswered questions, fading memories, and a lingering ache that settled deep within the hearts of those who remembered him. The small town had grown quieter, its collective grief tempered by the passage of time, yet beneath the surface, a stubborn ember of hope smoldered, waiting for a spark to reignite it. That spark came unexpectedly one bright spring afternoon, when a local drone enthusiast named Mark Jennings, a man in his early 40s with sun-bleached hair and an easy smile, took to the skies above the familiar woods to capture aerial footage for a personal project. As the small aircraft hummed softly overhead, its camera swept over the thick canopy and winding trails that had once been the setting of a community's darkest mystery. Then, through the crystal-clear lens, Mark spotted something peculiar. A rusted, weather-beaten bicycle propped against an ancient oak tree, its frame corroded by decades of exposure, yet stubbornly upright, as if waiting patiently to tell its story. The image struck Mark with a mixture of curiosity and unease, its presence a silent sentinel amid the sea of green and gold, beckoning to be noticed. Intrigued and compelled by a sense of responsibility, Mark shared the footage with local authorities and news outlets, igniting a wave of renewed attention and stirring emotions that had long lain dormant. The discovery of the bike, so intimately tied to Daniel's disappearance, sent ripples through the community, reviving memories and raising fresh questions about what might have been missed all those years ago. Maggie Harper, Daniel's mother, was among the first to see the footage, her heart pounding as the image brought a rush of vivid memories and the raw pain of hope rekindled. For the first time in decades, it seemed the forest might be willing to give up its secrets, offering a glimpse into a past that had remained shrouded in silence. The media descended swiftly, their cameras and microphones capturing the moment when technology pierced the veil of time, bringing the missing boy back into the spotlight. Investigators mobilized, combining the old with the new, years of experience and fading clues with cutting-edge tools and aerial perspectives, to begin a search that stretched beyond the limits of human reach. The drone's eye view revealed hidden clearings, overgrown paths, and forgotten corners of the woods that had eluded previous ground searches, casting a light into the dark spaces where Daniel's fate might still be found. The town held its breath, torn between cautious optimism and the fear that the truth might bring pain alongside closure. As the sun set behind the towering pines, the rusted bike stood quietly beneath the fading light, a symbol of the enduring mystery and the unyielding hope that drove a family and a community to seek answers against the odds. The investigation team gathered at the edge of the forest, their eyes fixed on the rusted bicycle, leaning precariously against a gnarled oak tree. Its metal frame battered and corroded but stubbornly intact after decades of exposure to the elements. The bike bore the unmistakable marks of age, faded paint chipped away by countless storms, a cracked leather seat softened by years of sun and rain, and a chain stiffened and nearly fused by rust. Investigators carefully documented every detail, photographing the weathered spokes and worn tires, while forensic specialists used gentle brushes to clear away the moss and dirt that clung like memories from a time long past. Subtle clues began to emerge beneath the grime. A faint engraving on the metal frame, a frayed piece of cloth caught on the handlebars, and small indentations in the soil around the bike's base where it seemed undisturbed by recent footsteps. The scene spoke to a stillness that defied time, as if the bicycle had been abandoned suddenly and left untouched, silently waiting for someone to notice. This discovery ignited a spark of hope among the team and the family, watching anxiously from nearby. After years of dead ends and faded leads, here was a tangible connection to Daniel Turner, the boy who vanished without a trace so many years ago. The bike's presence in such an isolated part of the forest suggested that the area might hold more secrets, prompting plans for a thorough search using both traditional methods and modern technology. The forensic experts collected samples of the surrounding soil, hoping to find trace evidence that could provide new insights, perhaps fibers from clothing, footprints frozen in hardened mud, or even remnants of personal items long lost. The discovery also raised questions about how the bike had remained upright for so long without falling or being disturbed, hinting at something deliberate or extraordinary about the site. Maggie Harper, Daniel's mother, watched with a mixture of apprehension and fragile optimism, her heart pounding as she saw the bike she had imagined countless times finally standing before her. The bike was more than a relic. It was a symbol of the past resurfacing, a silent witness that might finally help unravel the mystery that had haunted her family for nearly 4 decades. As the sun filtered through the trees and cast dappled shadows over the clearing, the investigators' determination deepened, fueled by the tangible evidence that connected the present to a painful past. The community felt the shift too. A renewed belief that the story of Daniel Turner was far from over and that justice might still be within reach. In the quiet forest clearing, the bike stood as a testament to time's passage and the relentless pursuit of truth, its secrets slowly beginning to unravel beneath the watchful eyes of those unwilling to let the past remain buried. The discovery of the weathered bicycle standing quietly against the ancient oak tree breathed new life into the search for Daniel Turner, pushing investigators and volunteers beyond the familiar trails and into parts of the forest that had remained unexplored for decades. Advances in technology offered tools that those who first searched in 1988 could only have dreamed of. From drones equipped with high-resolution cameras to thermal imaging devices that could peer through dense foliage and shifting shadows. A team of experts worked tirelessly, mapping the uncharted terrain with digital precision, scanning undergrowth and tree canopies that had long concealed secrets beneath layers of moss and decay. Rugged paths once deemed impassable were traversed with all-terrain vehicles, while foot patrols combed through brush and thickets, their movements slow and deliberate as they hunted for any sign that might connect to Daniel's final moments. The forest seemed to hold its breath, its silence punctuated only by the hum of drones overhead and the crunch of boots on fallen leaves and cracked twigs. The interplay of old and new created a sense of urgency and hope as satellite imagery was cross-referenced with decades-old maps, revealing hidden clearings, forgotten streams, and abandoned logging cabins whose crumbling walls whispered of lives once lived and stories left untold. The investigators used ground-penetrating radar in spots where the earth had been softened by recent rain, searching for anomalies beneath the surface that might indicate buried evidence. As the days wore on, fresh eyes caught details missed in earlier searches: a disturbed patch of soil, a weathered piece of fabric snagged on a thorn, and faint footprints barely visible in a muddy hollow. Each finding, no matter how small, was meticulously logged and analyzed, fueling the growing belief that the forest still held answers waiting to be uncovered. Maggie Harper followed the expansion of the search with a cautious optimism, her heart swelling and contracting with each update, hoping that this new approach would finally illuminate the darkness that had long surrounded her son's fate. The community rallied around the efforts, offering support and sharing memories, united by the possibility that decades of silence might finally give way to truth. In the interplay between the forest's ancient shadows and the cutting-edge technology sweeping through its depths, there was a profound sense of respect for the past, alongside an eager embrace of the future. The search, once confined to known paths and fading memories, had transformed into a relentless pursuit across unknown trails, where history met innovation, and hope rekindled the fire that had long been smoldering in the hearts of those unwilling to give up. As sunlight filtered through the towering pines and dapples danced across the forest floor, the promise of discovery hung heavy in the air. A beacon, guiding weary souls toward closure and understanding amid the tangled wilderness. As the investigation pushed deeper into the tangled forest and the layers of time that had settled over Daniel Turner's disappearance, long-forgotten memories began to resurface among the townsfolk, like faint echoes carried on the wind that stirred once silent corners of the community's collective consciousness. Older residents, who had remained quiet or resigned for years, now found themselves compelled to speak of strange sightings and unexplained noises they had witnessed on that fateful day in 1988, details that had slipped through the cracks of earlier inquiries or been dismissed as inconsequential whispers. Mrs. Caldwell, the town librarian with silver-streaked hair and keen eyes, recounted how she had seen a flicker of movement near the edge of the woods as she closed the library late that afternoon, a shadow too quick and silent to fully make out, but unsettling enough to linger in her thoughts. Mr. Hayes, a retired truck driver, spoke of a distant, eerie sound he could not identify, a low hum mixed with a faint metallic clatter that had echoed through the trees while he was passing by on a rarely used road. Children who had been playing near the forest's fringe that day remembered a figure standing motionless among the trees, too still to be human, vanishing before anyone could call out. These scattered accounts, once isolated and dismissed, began to weave together a tapestry of unexplained phenomena that hinted at a hidden story beneath the surface of the old case. Some townsfolk whispered about a mysterious campervan seen parked near the forest days before Daniel's disappearance, a vehicle no one could identify or trace, while others mentioned rumors of heated arguments heard in the distance, voices raised but never fully heard, adding layers of intrigue and suspicion. The investigation team listened carefully, recording these recollections with a mixture of skepticism and cautious hope, knowing that memory could be unreliable, but also recognizing that buried truths often hide in the details of personal experience. Maggie Harper felt the stirrings of a renewed urgency as these long-suppressed memories came to light, fueling her resolve and offering glimmers of hope that had seemed so distant for so long. The town's atmosphere shifted subtly, as neighbors who once avoided the subject now exchanged stories, their voices tinged with the weight of shared pain and the fragile spark of community coming together. The forest, with its shifting shadows and whispering leaves, seemed to hold more than just silence. It cradled secrets that the years had not erased, waiting patiently for someone to listen. As night fell and the cool breeze carried the distant calls of owls, the echoes of the past resonated deeper within the hearts of those seeking answers. reminding them that even the longest silence can be broken by the courage to remember and speak the truth. The unfolding revelations breathed new life into the case, reminding the town that the past, no matter how deeply buried, can never be truly forgotten. The forest floor, once thought to hold only the rusted remains of a long-abandoned bicycle, revealed something far more haunting and mysterious when search teams stumbled upon the remnants of a makeshift camp, nestled in a small clearing just beyond the tree line where the bike had stood silent for decades. The site was a fragile collection of broken branches arranged in a crude shelter, weathered tarps partially buried beneath layers of leaves, and scattered fragments of metal and fabric that bore the unmistakable marks of time and neglect. Charred stones arranged in a near-perfect circle hinted at fires long extinguished, their ashes mingling with the damp earth and the faint scent of smoke that still clung stubbornly to the surrounding air. Investigators moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of moss and fallen needles, eyes sharp for any clue that might connect this hidden refuge to the boy who had vanished so many years ago. A frayed backpack strap caught on a thorny branch drew particular attention, its faded colors hinting at a connection to Daniel's personal belongings, sparking a renewed surge of hope among those desperate for answers. The discovery raised more questions than it answered, inviting speculation about who had occupied this clandestine shelter, whether it was Daniel himself or someone else who had crossed paths with him in the shadowed woods. Forensic experts meticulously collected soil samples and examined the fragile remnants, searching for traces of DNA, fingerprints, or any material that could unlock the story behind this forgotten camp. The camp's isolation deep within the dense forest suggested a deliberate attempt to conceal activity, a secret place hidden from prying eyes and the chaos of the outside world. Maggie Harper, who had followed the unfolding investigation with a mixture of cautious optimism and guarded fear, found herself both drawn to and unsettled by the sight, sensing that the truth it held could either bring peace or open wounds. Long thought closed. Townspeople, who had once believed the forest to be merely a backdrop to a tragic disappearance, now spoke in hushed tones about the camp, weaving new theories that spoke of survival, desperation, or darker possibilities lurking beneath the canopy. The interplay of light and shadow among the towering pines seemed to echo the uncertainty and complexity of the case, where every discovery was both a step forward and a reminder of the unknown. As evening settled and the search teams packed away their equipment, the hidden camp remained behind, silent and watchful, a fragile monument to a secret waiting patiently to be told. It stood as a testament to the enduring mystery of Daniel Turner's disappearance, challenging the community to confront the tangled web of past choices, hidden truths, and the unyielding desire to finally uncover what had been lost in the depths of the forest so many years before. Years of grief and unanswered questions had slowly unraveled the fabric of the Turner family, and as the investigation into Daniel's disappearance gained new momentum, old wounds and buried secrets began to resurface, threatening to reshape their understanding of that long-ago spring day and the shadows that had settled over their lives. Tom Turner, once a stoic and steady presence, found himself grappling with the weight of confessions and long-held resentments that spilled quietly but relentlessly into the family's fragile equilibrium. Helen, who had held the family together through years of sorrow, faced painful revelations about her own past choices and the strained relationships that had simmered beneath the surface, some connected to people who had been close to Daniel in his final days. Emily, Daniel's younger sister, confronted truths about family dynamics and hidden arguments that explained the fractures she had sensed as a child but never fully understood, pieces of a puzzle that suggested the mystery was not confined to the forest but woven into the very heart of the family. Letters discovered in an old desk hinted at disputes over money and property, old debts and grudges that had never been spoken aloud, but seemed now to cast a new light on the circumstances surrounding Daniel's last days. Whispered conversations recalled by distant relatives revealed tensions between Tom and a business partner whose name had surfaced in the police files but was never thoroughly investigated, suggesting motives that had been overlooked or deliberately ignored. The family's once close-knit image began to show cracks as accusations and defenses arose, fueled by years of frustration and grief made raw by the reopening of the case. Maggie Harper, Daniel's mother, found herself torn between the desire to protect her family's dignity and the urgent need to uncover every truth, no matter how uncomfortable. These revelations added complexity to the investigation, intertwining personal histories with the wider search for answers and complicating the path to closure. The community watched quietly as the Turner family navigated these turbulent waters, their story now public and their private struggles laid bare for all to see. The shadows of the past reached deep into the present, challenging the family to confront not only the mystery of Daniel's disappearance, but the painful realities that had long been buried beneath years of silence and denial. As tension and emotion surged within the household, the determination to find truth grew stronger, fueled by the hope that understanding the past would finally bring peace. In the midst of fractured relationships and exposed secrets, the Turner family stood at a crossroads, their bonds tested but their resolve unbroken, united by a shared loss and the unyielding pursuit of answers that might finally lay the ghosts of the past to rest. The quiet town was unsettled by the sudden arrival of a stranger, a man in his late 40s, with sharp eyes shadowed by years of experience, and a face weathered by time and secrets, who appeared at the local diner, where Maggie Harper often sought a brief escape from the relentless pain of her son's disappearance. His name was Samuel Price, and he carried an air of both urgency and caution as he approached Maggie one chilly afternoon, his voice low and measured yet tinged with an unmistakable gravity that commanded attention. Samuel claimed to have known things about Daniel Turner's fate that had never been spoken aloud, fragments of truth buried beneath layers of silence and fear, and he warned Maggie and the investigators to tread carefully, suggesting that forces long hidden might still be watching and that the answers they sought could come with dangerous consequences. His words were cryptic, veiled in hints and half-revealed details that sparked both hope and unease, weaving a web of intrigue that suggested Daniel's disappearance was part of a larger story entangled with people who preferred the past to remain buried. Townsfolk whispered in hushed tones as Samuel's presence stirred memories and suspicions that had long been pushed aside, his warnings casting shadows over the renewed investigation and unsettling the fragile sense of progress. Maggie listened intently, torn between the desire for clarity and the fear that the truths being hinted at might fracture her world further. Samuel spoke of a night cloaked in darkness, when Daniel was last seen near the forest's edge, of meetings and threats that had silenced witnesses and muddied the waters of justice. He cautioned that digging too deep might provoke those who had much to lose, urging vigilance and discretion. His eyes held the weight of experience, reflecting a man who had walked dangerous paths and understood the price of revelation. Despite the veiled nature of his message, Maggie felt a spark of determination rekindled, recognizing that the stranger's arrival was both a warning and an opportunity, a key to unlock doors that had long been sealed. The local police approached Samuel with guarded skepticism, yet even they could not dismiss the urgency and detail in his account. As he departed as mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving behind a town buzzing with questions and unease, his presence lingered like a shadow, a reminder that the journey toward truth was far from over, and that the path ahead might be fraught with peril and unexpected twists. Maggie stood at the crossroads of hope and fear, the stranger's words echoing in her mind as she prepared to face whatever lay hidden in the depths of the forest and the secrets that had been waiting patiently to be uncovered for more than 3 decades. The forensic team worked meticulously around the hidden campsite and the rusted bicycle, their movements deliberate and precise as they pieced together fragments of a story frozen in time. Each artifact whispering secrets that had remained silent for 36 years. Samples of soil were carefully scraped from beneath the bike's tires and from the ground around the makeshift shelter, while tiny fibers clung to torn fabric discovered tangled in the surrounding underbrush. Their colors faded, but still telling tales of the past. Specialists sifted through charred remains of campfire wood, searching for traces of accelerants or other substances that might reveal what had transpired beneath the canopy of ancient trees. Every scrap of evidence was catalogued with painstaking care, from a dented canister half buried in mud to a small weathered pocket knife whose blade was dulled by years of exposure, its handle worn smooth by unseen hands. As laboratory results trickled in, the picture grew more complex. Some findings suggested a sudden accident, a fall or injury that might explain why Daniel never returned home, while others hinted at the darker possibility of foul play, perhaps involving someone who had been nearby that day and left no trace for decades. There were signs of a struggle, disturbed soil that did not match the patterns of natural decay, subtle abrasions on the bike's frame, inconsistent with simple neglect, and faint, partial footprints that seemed to tell of hurried movement away from the campsite. The forensic experts debated the implications of each clue, their voices low but urgent, aware that the evidence might finally pierce the fog that had clouded Daniel's fate for so long. Maggie Harper watched from a distance, her heart a tumultuous mix of hope and fear, realizing that with each new discovery, the past drew nearer and the truth, no matter how painful, was inching closer to the surface. The findings challenged old assumptions and demanded fresh perspectives, suggesting that Daniel's disappearance was not a simple tragedy, but a layered event shaped by forces both natural and human. The forest, once silent and inscrutable, now spoke in the language of science and memory, its secrets slowly unraveling under the relentless scrutiny of those unwilling to let them remain buried. As the investigation deepened, the team prepared to expand their search based on this new information, knowing that the answers uncovered here would reshape the narrative for the family and the community forever. The evidence held the power to bring closure, to explain the long years of uncertainty, and to finally honor the boy who had vanished beneath the canopy of trees, his story etched in the earth, waiting to be told. The small town that had once tried to bury the pain of Daniel Turner's disappearance now found itself forced to confront a past long hidden beneath layers of silence and denial. As the renewed investigation peeled back the curtain on uncomfortable truths that shook the very foundations of the community's sense of safety and unity. Conversations that had been whispered behind closed doors now spilled into the open, bringing to light secrets that some had hoped would remain forgotten, casting suspicion and doubt on neighbors, friends, and even local authorities once trusted without question. Old alliances fractured as accusations emerged, revealing fractures in relationships that had been concealed by years of polite smiles and silent avoidance. The discovery of the hidden campsite and the evidence uncovered at the scene ignited fierce debates in town meetings, at kitchen tables, and across social media, where residents struggled to reconcile the idyllic image of their hometown with the darker realities now exposed. Families who had lost children long ago found themselves reliving grief in public, while others faced the painful task of explaining their own past actions or inactions, some admitting to knowledge they had kept silent about, others denying involvement with fervor. The local police department, once seen as a pillar of protection, faced scrutiny and criticism for past oversights and perceived cover-ups, stirring mistrust that spread like wildfire. Maggie Harper, who had borne her own share of pain and hope, found herself navigating a landscape altered not only by new evidence, but by the shifting emotions and fractured loyalties of the people around her. The weight of years pressed down on the town, challenging the narratives it had constructed to protect itself, and forcing a reckoning with the complexities of human nature and the consequences of secrecy. Some residents sought forgiveness and healing, eager to move forward with honesty and accountability, while others resisted, clinging to denial and fear in a desperate attempt to preserve what remained of their peace. The forest that had once swallowed Daniel without a trace seemed to mirror the turmoil of the town, its shadows now punctuated by light as truths emerged from the darkness. In this fragile moment of confrontation, the community stood at a crossroads between reconciliation and division, caught between the past they had tried to forget and the future that demanded truth. The process was painful and raw, yet beneath the turmoil lay the possibility of growth and renewal, a chance for the town to acknowledge its scars and begin the slow journey toward healing. As the investigation continued to unravel the tangled threads of history, the people of the town learned that confronting the past, no matter how painful, was the only path to hope, justice, and ultimately, peace. The revelation of new evidence and fresh leads propelled the investigation into Daniel Turner's disappearance toward a critical juncture as authorities identified suspects and made arrests that offered the long-awaited promise of justice. Yet the path ahead was fraught with complications born of the relentless passage of time, lost evidence, and memories that had faded like distant echoes in the minds of witnesses. The suspects, once ordinary members of the community, now found themselves under intense scrutiny, their past actions re-evaluated through the lens of decades-old mysteries that refused to be forgotten. Prosecutors faced daunting challenges as they sifted through incomplete records, degraded physical evidence, and testimonies that wavered under the strain of years, each piece of the puzzle demanding careful analysis and corroboration to build a case strong enough to withstand the rigors of the legal system. Families of the victims, including Maggie Harper and her loved ones, grappled with mixed emotions, relief that progress was finally being made, tempered by frustration and sorrow that so many years had passed without answers. The courtroom became a stage where past and present collided, with prosecutors presenting painstakingly reconstructed narratives, while defense attorneys highlighted the uncertainties inherent in cases stretched thin by time. Witnesses, now older and sometimes reluctant to revisit painful memories, took the stand with courage, their testimonies carrying the heavy burden of decades of silence. The community watched closely, divided between hope for closure and skepticism born of years of disappointment. Media coverage brought renewed attention, casting a spotlight on the town's long struggle and the complex realities of seeking justice after so many years. The legal process unfolded slowly, each hearing marked by procedural hurdles and emotional testimony, underscoring how justice delayed often meant justice complicated. The very fabric of the town's collective memory was tested, as old wounds reopened and new questions arose about accountability and truth. Yet amid the challenges, the pursuit of justice inspired a sense of resilience and determination, a refusal to let the shadows of the past obscure the quest for answers and closure. As verdicts and sentences loomed, the families prepared for the difficult task of healing and moving forward, aware that while the law might offer some measure of justice, the scars left by decades of uncertainty and loss would endure. The path was imperfect and painful, but it was a step toward acknowledgement and accountability that had long been denied. In this moment, justice was no longer a distant hope, but a tangible goal, imperfect but vital, carrying the weight of a community's courage and the unyielding belief that even delayed, truth and justice must prevail. The long shadow cast by Daniel Turner's disappearance began to lift slowly as his family and the community, bound together by shared grief and resilience, embarked on the delicate journey of healing, finding moments of peace amid the lingering pain and the heavy weight of loss that had defined so many years. In the quiet spaces of their home, Maggie Harper and her loved ones sought solace in memories both joyful and bittersweet, gathering photographs, cherished belongings, and stories that brought Daniel's spirit to life, even as they acknowledged the emptiness his absence left behind. Community memorials were held beneath the towering trees of the forest that had witnessed so much sorrow, where friends, neighbors, and strangers alike came together to light candles, share memories, and honor the boy who had vanished, but never been forgotten. The town's pace shifted, embracing a newfound empathy and openness, as conversations that once skirted around the tragedy grew more heartfelt and honest, offering support to those still carrying the scars. Healing was neither swift nor linear. It unfolded in quiet moments of reflection, in tears shed alone and in groups, in laughter recalled and in silence shared. Programs were established to support families of missing persons, inspired by the Turners' determination to turn pain into purpose, providing a community for those navigating the uncertain terrain of loss and hope. The forest itself seemed to change, its shadows softening as sunlight filtered through the leaves in a gentle embrace, symbolizing the fragile renewal taking root. Yet even as healing began, the ache of what was lost remained a constant companion, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of love. Maggie found strength in her role as a voice for others who had faced similar fates, channeling her sorrow into advocacy and awareness, determined that Daniel's story would not fade into silence. The community's wounds, though raw, became a source of connection and collective resilience, fostering an environment where truth and remembrance could coexist with hope and the promise of new beginnings. The process was marked by moments of doubt and grief, but also by a growing acceptance that peace was possible even in the aftermath of unimaginable pain. As seasons turned and years passed, the legacy of Daniel Turner lived on in the hearts of those who loved him, a testament to the enduring human spirit and the unbreakable bonds forged through loss. In this fragile balance of remembrance and healing, the family and the town found a path forward, walking together toward a future shaped by compassion, understanding, and the quiet strength born from confronting the deepest sorrows. The journey was far from over, but with each step, the wounds softened, and the light of hope grew stronger, illuminating the darkness that had once seemed impenetrable. Daniel Turner's life, though tragically cut short by his disappearance, left an indelible mark on the small town that had once been his home and the community that had grown around the mystery of his fate. A legacy forged through the resilience of those who loved him and the unwavering pursuit of truth that transformed grief into a beacon of hope. Born with a curious spirit and a quiet kindness that endeared him to neighbors and friends alike, Daniel had been a boy full of promise, his laughter once echoing through the forest trails he so loved to explore, a presence that seemed woven into the very fabric of the town's identity. His sudden vanishing in 1988 shattered that fabric, plunging families, friends, and strangers into a shared void of loss that spanned decades, coloring the town's collective memory with sorrow and unanswered questions. Yet, It was precisely this enduring pain that fueled the tireless efforts of his mother, Maggie Harper, and others who refused to let the past be forgotten or ignored. The discovery of the rusted bicycle and hidden campsite decades later rekindled a determination that transcended time, igniting renewed investigations that challenged long-held assumptions and unveiled truths once concealed by silence and fear. The town, once hesitant to revisit the shadow of Daniel's disappearance, found itself compelled to confront its own history, grappling with uncomfortable realities and emerging with a deeper understanding of the complexities that shaped their community. In this process, the story of Daniel Turner became more than a tragic cold case. It evolved into a testament to the power of perseverance and the enduring strength of human connection. The legacy left behind inspired programs to support families of missing persons, fostering awareness and compassion while bridging gaps between generations marked by loss. Memorials and community gatherings celebrated Daniel's life, transforming places of grief into spaces of remembrance and resilience. The forest that had once swallowed Daniel in silence now stood as a symbol of both mystery and hope, its shadows touched by the light of those who sought justice and healing. The impact of Daniel's story rippled beyond the town's borders, reminding all who heard it that even in the face of profound tragedy, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and find meaning. His disappearance taught lessons about the importance of vigilance, community support, and the relentless pursuit of truth, shaping how similar cases were approached and cared for in years to come. As the years rolled forward, the memory of Daniel Turner remained a quiet, powerful presence, an enduring reminder of a boy who vanished, but whose life and story continued to inspire change. The legacy was one of courage. In the face of loss, of voices raised to pierce through silence, and of a community transformed by its commitment to remember, seek justice, and ultimately heal. In the end, Daniel's story was not only about what was lost, but about the lasting impact one life can have on many, a legacy born of love, truth, and the unyielding hope that even the darkest mysteries can find their light.